Sometime around the year 1900, an article in a kind of periodical in Japan that was aimed at sending back information to uh, America and Europe on what Japan was all about, called the Japan Mail, wrote, "The nude is seen in Japan, but not looked at." We've had some considerations about the logos of Hericlitus. This guy Sunsteck was talking about how the logos is heard but not listened to. The great difference between sexuality in Japan and China, I'm not exactly sure how much there's an identity between it in Japan and China, but I think one can say overall in the Far East, sex is not a vice. There's no idea of vice connected to it or sin, which is a very great fact or reality. The anthropologist Alan McFarland describes how rather shocked he was at seeing Japan the first few times that he was there. The extremes of the Japanese porno industry are contrasted with the total lack of sexualization of the advertising. So, and also the fact that the pornography is in the, as it were, the bourgeois shops on the high streets, very innocuously, and nobody, just as in what I just read, it's seen, but it's not looked at. People pick it up, people do look at it, but it doesn't arouse any moral concern. This raises very deep questions when thought about, from instance, from the perspective of how so far has Western biology taken us in wrong directions through their focus on empiricism. For instance, Jordan Peterson makes these remarks about the ultimate advertisement would be a woman with her breasts accentuated and all her charms accentuated and maybe some red lipstick and then holding some soy sauce or whatnot, and maybe sitting on the hood of a red Ferrari, let's say, or Mustang. It's known, of course, that red supposedly universally has this unconscious bias in contradistinction to blue. But it would be very interesting to know if these matters of sexualization of using a kind of sexo metrics or techniques in advertising manipulation really do not operate the same way on the Far Eastern cultures. India is probably a different situation somewhat. So is this a form that has had the greater emotions read into it? How is this working? If you think of so it must probably be so that there's nothing in the Far East, which is like the judgment of Paris, which long precedes it's mentioned in the Iliad, which is a very archaic incident, and which indicates the awareness of sexuality to the looking, to the in a way where it becomes a form which has an ethical, moral significance. How so far then is this Heraclitean people always live very far from the logos? Is it so then that the Japanese live very far from eros? Socrates says that he has an erotic desire for the logos, for discourses. In the Phaedrus, for instance, he says that. The whole theme of Eros as being flipped on its head by the Athenians in contradistinction to um, the common view of the Hellenes, which must accord with the view of the power of Eros as shown in the judgment of Alexandros or Paris. So this is a very complex theme, and it raises profound questions. What is the modification here between the biological empirical and the looking rather than just seeing, or the listening rather than just hearing? So let's keep that in mind as we go forward. So just as there are these background spirits, as it were, in the world of the Hellenic world, or however it should be called, the archaic Greek world. In China, it should be said that there's a great, beside from the three teachings, there's still a great power of the local cults, the fox spirits, the ghosts, things of that nature. There's a book that I don't totally in, commend to anyone, but nonetheless, it's interesting on that score of somebody's, and for other reasons, called Cinderella and Her Sisters, where an academic made this attempt to show that the footbinding has been given a bad rap in the West. But she, in the course of the book, she goes into quite a bit about the local spirits. One can also get a lot about that from anthropology journals and such. But that's still alive in China, and it's interesting to think about that as in connection to all these questions that Dugin's raising in his ethnology or anthropology about the ethnos, and how the ethnos is supposedly at the base of cultures, and that the higher levels of discourse and socialization are based on the founding level. On this the whole subject of the erotic is a very multifarious subject in these cultures, West and East, and so therefore it's difficult to congeal them to their essences and say really listen to what's happening there.